The law states that your parents can write and sign a diploma when they deem that you are done. And that's literally the magic of homeschooling. Hello, this is Miss Andrea, and I am way off recording schedule. Why? Because last weekend we produced our play, Julius Caesar, and this weekend we graduated to seniors. So with that said, let's talk about homeschool graduations. I've got some Reddit questions here for you. If I have been homeschooled since grade 9 and I am now in grade 12, how am I expected to graduate? I know my mom has to reconfirm with the school board every year that we're still homeschooled, but I'm confused on how we'll actually graduate grade 12. Is the school board just going to blindly let me without any proof that I learned the required things? Or is there a certain test I have to do? I know about the GED and the CAEC, but I also know those things are meant for dropouts or people who didn't get the chance to graduate in high school. Do I fall under that category or not? I'm just very confused about all of this, and my parents don't know any better either. They apologize for their grammar after that, but the grammar's perfect. It baffles me that these things were never explained to a high school senior. So, for all you high school kids out there homeschooled who don't understand the magic behind homeschooling, here's basically how it goes. You could be taking online classes with an accredited school, which that's super obvious to you what's going on, right? You log on, your work is there, you do your work, you turn it in, you hear back. Clearly that is not the case here. The other options are you take some classes at home, your parents provide the curriculum textbooks or whatever online system, and you may also take some classes at a homeschool program. I run a homeschool program, so I can best tell you how a homeschool program will graduate its kids. But before we get there, let's talk about what should be happening while you're in high school. 9th grade, your parents assign 5 to 6 classes. They include a math, a language arts, a history, a science, maybe an art, maybe a computer science, foreign language. You complete that coursework. Your parents grade that coursework, put it on a report or transcript, and file it. Rinse and repeat for grades 10, 11. Somewhere in there, you should be taking standardized tests, the SAT or the PSAT, if you are college bound. I would think that everyone would assume their children are college bound until they find out different, unless their child is saying there's absolutely no way I'm going to college, right? So there should be some testing happening that shows you how you're doing in relation to your homeschooled peers, in relation to all your schooled peers out there, right? Senior year, your parents have given you courses for 3 years. They look at the stuff on a spreadsheet. They decide what you need your senior year, because senior year tends to look different for homeschoolers. Most have completed most of what they need. So usually you need 1 math and 1 science. And so then you need 1 math and 1 science generally by senior year. And so there's opportunities to take other things that are going to be enriching or going to lean toward your career. So you should be experiencing, working your way through, being taught some curriculum in each of these courses. Every year, you're being homeschooled because you're being taught curriculum across a multitude of courses. If that is not happening, that is educational neglect. You don't just float through life and graduate homeschool. You have to do work. Your parents have to hold on to that work and compile it. Now, eyes are itchy. So, assuming all of that has been done, there is no permission to graduate. If your parents are following the law of homeschooling, the law also provides them the permission to graduate when they deem that you are ready. For me, in my circles, for those that I work with, and for those that I graduate, we are working toward college. We are working toward a very clear and obvious goal. And so a homeschool transcript and portfolio is being prepared. So your grades are being kept in a record. Your best writing is being held on to. Portfolio is being created to show off your best work. And early in 12th grade, these things are presented to a college. If you have applied to and gotten into a college, then you know that no one's going to have any issues with you graduating as a homeschooler. The law states that your parents can write and sign a diploma when they deem that you are done. And that's literally the magic of homeschooling. The reason I've touched on educational neglect is because it kind of floors me that there's a 12th grader out here asking how they graduate, because if you have been doing all the things that you need to do to graduate, you should be aware of what is happening around you. And someone should actually stop and explain it to me. I explain to all my students the entire process every year. I explained to my own children the entire process every year. And the people that responded to this Reddit question gave very surface answers also. And it just bothers me, because I think if a child is 16, 17, 18, they should have full disclosure and understand the process that they are experiencing. So at this point, about 25 years into modern homeschooling, colleges are just used to homeschoolers. They're used to receiving homeschool transcripts and homeschool portfolios, and they've grown very trusting of them, provided the SAT scores look like they match the grades that your parents are writing on a transcript. For example, back in the day, let's say 10 years ago, I worked with a string of homeschool parents who wanted help writing their children's homeschool report cards, homeschool transcripts to send to colleges. And everyone wanted to assign their children A's in math. And that's fine if your child earned an A. So there's this thing called mastery that happens in homeschooling. And you, instead of rushing through the math like you would do if you're in a classroom, because everyone's on the same chapter at the same time, you linger longer if you have a chapter that's harder, and you go faster if you have a chapter that's easier. And so by the time you get to the end of that math curriculum, you should have an A. If it took you 18 months to finish Algebra 1, when it takes most people 10 months to finish Algebra 1, does that still deserve an A? Well, they've mastered it. They understand it at an A level. But if they took twice as long to finish it, there's some kind of grade discrepancy to me, especially when you're reporting to colleges. And here's where it shows up. If you then take the SAT and you score 510 on the math portion of the SAT, I know that you can't have an A on Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 with that math score. At that point, the college is going to look at your math score and look at your grades and say, this parent is just writing down A's, and your whole application is going to go out the window. So parents need to check themselves on the grades they submit to colleges and the grades they record for a homeschooler. You can definitely reason that your child has learned to mastery, and so that's why they have all A's. But if you don't spell that out really clearly and put in the amount of hours it took for that child to get to that A, the college is not going to believe you, and they're not going to want the student there. They're also not going to want to admit a student who took 2 years to learn Algebra 2, because how long are they going to take to learn college math? So you have to do your work diligently so that your parents have something to submit to the schools. So that's why I'm floored that there are questions here. So at the end of the day, parents write the homeschool portfolio. Kids do the work to give parents something to present in the homeschool portfolio and the homeschool transcript. And at the end of the day, parents sign the diploma. Graduation. Is it really as simple as mom said so? Our state doesn't require us to test or follow up on our teaching. I am strongly for student-centered, their interest in pushing where they strive. Said child also has dyslexia, so had a gap when dropping public school. I'm hopefully to try and close that in reading, but I want to play to the strengths and weaknesses. We do core-like reading, math, etc., but also a lot of real-life studies like finance instead of worrying about the details of a war over a century ago. I'd rather set up the future than worry about if I check the school boxes. We do school almost every day. Don't take weekends or summers off, but we need a few days off. That's okay style. This is being written by a homeschooling parent. I'm reading it verbatim. While I'm happy with what we're doing and the process, I'm worried not following Common Core will somehow bite me in the rear. Or maybe the graduation is not as easy as me saying 12th grade is completed, or maybe it's not a real diploma. I've obviously read on it, but it feels so easy and makes me feel like I have been missing something. I also don't see her going back to public. But if for some reason she did, I also feel like maybe I'm setting up for failure, even though I think the areas that matter are doing better. Or maybe it's just mom guilt worrying about failing your child. Lol. This is in the unschooling category. I've gotten an unschooler into 24 colleges, but that is not the rule. That is the exception. When you're unschooling a high school student, there has to be something exceptional about them and clear evidence of a strong work ethic to get them into college. The law says mom can say the child is done and sign a diploma. That is how that works. Colleges get to say whether or not they get to come to those colleges after homeschooling. And for me, and people are going to push back on this, I think a homeschooled child is done when they get accepted into a college or an internship. Someone has to look and say, you did good work. Come on, come with me. Let's go. So once again, this bothers me. Yes, parents can graduate their child. Parents can say you did it. Let's go. And of course, there's dyslexia. So have you done anything to record an IEP in writing? Or are you just like flying with the wind, right? So let's look at the child who I got into 24 colleges, who was unschooled. He had a penchant for Shakespeare. He read all the plays, formed a great deal of them. Reading Shakespearean language is not for the weak, right? He did a TED Talk in grade 12. He was kind of impressive. He auditioned to all the theater conservatories in the country. You go to 2 or 3 auditions, and the theater conservatory schools fly into the audition, so you don't have to go and audition to each school. And most of them asked him to come and apply. I harassed him to finish geometry and personal finance. Everything else he had done on his own through science, summer camps. He took a social studies class with me. He had done some social studies in a different homeschool co-op here and there. But he wrote like he was running out of time. Yes, I know I just stole that line from Hamilton. But he convinced theater magazines to let him go in and interview actors and write for them. He got himself press credentials and interviewed actors. And so his writing samples were literally published articles. So unschoolers can do extremely well, but there needs to be a strong focus and a strong, obvious discipline. And not just saying, well, my kid's bad at this and my kid's bad at that, so we're going to gloss over some things. Please don't do the bare minimum. Or if you're going to do the bare minimum in an area, you need to do over and above in another area. And that's how I feel about that. How do you celebrate a homeschool graduation? I'm your typical homeschooler graduating from online school next week. The bad thing is that I have no idea how to celebrate. There's no graduation ceremony. Well, I can't attend anyway. Prom, graduation parties, or any other typical senior activities. How do you celebrate graduation from homeschool/online school? I have 0 friends, so something I could do with my family or by myself. That would be great. It makes me super sad. I don't think that there should be a 10th, 11th, or 12th grade homeschool student with 0 friends. I think a parent should be going out of their way to make sure that this child has friends, neighborhood friends, friends with the same hobbies, some kind of friends. There should be some graduate comrades somewhere. I graduated 2 girls yesterday from my homeschool program. They were not the best of friends. They weren't enemies. They just weren't the best of friends. But they've been together for the last 5 years, and they celebrated joyously together. This one of the 2 girls, this will be her only graduation ceremony. And the other girl, it's the first of several things. She did the graduation with us, the homeschool program, and then she's doing graduation with a bigger co-op she belongs to, and then her family's having a party. So the way our graduation program went was we welcomed everybody. Someone sang. No, we welcomed everybody. The graduates processed in. We did introduction. Someone sang. It's such a blur. We did some talkies. And then we asked their fellow students, because we have a mixed age program, and friends and family to stand up and say something kind about the graduates. Give advice, whatever. And that took a half hour. That was fun. And so at that point, I gave awards to a bunch of students at all different age grades in the program. Gave a bunch of awards. This kid was best at that. And then we turned to the graduates. And each graduate gave a 5-minute speech because there were only 2, so why not? And then when that was done, the directors of the program spoke. First me, then my co-founder, and then our new executive director all spoke, and spoke directly to each of the young women who graduated. And then, just when everyone thought it was done and they were ready to get up and get some food, I was like, wait, we have to present diplomas. And so what I did was I handed each child a certificate of completion from our homeschool program. It says, you were here, you took these classes, great job. And then I called up the parents. And for the parents, I had 2 diplomas with their names handwritten in calligraphy, 2 standard diplomas following wording that's typical in our state. Made sure it said high school diploma on it, because it doesn't have to say homeschool diploma, it can say high school diploma on it. And the signature lines were blank. And I handed a pen to the parents. And I had the parents sign the diplomas and present the diplomas to their children. Because when you're unaccredited in Georgia, when you're a homeschool program, you don't issue a diploma. The parent still issues a diploma. So we did that. We had a quick brunch. Each child had a table showing off pictures and their accomplishments and their medals and awards from how many years, right? And then everybody went home. And that's how our small homeschool program celebrated our graduation. And so one girl is done. She's graduated. She got off in a car with about 50 family members, and they were going to go have a party, right? The other girl has another graduation first week of June. That's going to be similar. It's going to be more churchy than ours was, because we're all inclusive, right? Although her faith came up and people leaned on it, that's fine. That's who she is. That's just not something that we make a big deal out of, or that it's also not something that we discourage, right? And then she's going to have a party. So bare minimum, there should be a party. Kids I've worked with in the past who got GEDs had a party. Everyone had a party. There should be a family party where everyone comes out. As part of that family party, I've seen the parents pull everyone around into a circle, say a blessing, a prayer, or a speech, and then hand the child a diploma, and then have a party as part of a cookout. So it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be a lot of pomp and circumstance, but there should definitely be a moment where you stop and recognize that the child has done the thing, and that now they're crossing over into that next stage of life where they're more in charge of their life and they're making decisions for themselves. And then there should be a party. There should always be a party. There should be dancing. So that's all I have. Till next time.